being conducted electronically. You can electronically attend to the meeting and provide public comment. There are instructions via Zoom. You can attend also via YouTube channel or via a written comment. To start the meeting, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. And could we have the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, please begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, could we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Vondergraff,
Present.
Vice Chair Williams,
Here.
Maggie Bird,
Here.
Matthew Johnston,
Here.
Nanette Metz,
Here.
James Flickinger, will know as absent, Gerald Abramson,
Here.
Steve Weiss,
Here.
Steve Tannehill,
Here.
and for the record, Robert Trimborn has been excused from this meeting. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's go ahead. Any comments on the agenda? We have comments, public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per item. Public comment period is reserved for issues that are not on the agenda. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item 5, please press the raise hand button. If you're calling in, press star and then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Okay. Can we go ahead with approval of the October 3rd minutes? This is items 6 through 10 in the agenda packet. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I so moved, Maggie. No. Sorry, Steve.
And is there a second?
I second, Steve Weiss.
Okay, all in favor, roll call, please.
Chair Vondergraff,
Aye.
Vice Chair Williams,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Aye.
Matthew Johnston,
Aye.
Nanette Metz,
Abstain.
Gerald Abramson,
Aye.
Steve Weiss,
Abstain, I wasn't in attendance.
okay, Steve Tannehill,
I will also abstain because I too was not at last month's meeting.
okay. That motion passes 5-0 with 3 abstentions by Nanette Metz, Steve Weiss, and Steve Tannehill.
Thank you. Let's move towards public comments. Are there written public comments? Any comments that we've received that are in writing, please?
Yes, Chair, we have received 2 written public comments, and at this time we have no members of the public that have raised their hand. So I will go ahead with the written comments.
Please do.
Thank you. The first comment is from Arthur Bierman. It reads, Saturday, November 4th, 2022, there were multiple planes flying over the water outside Shell Island over Seabridge for long periods. The planes shut off their radar as to tail numbers so they could not be tracked. What can be done to find these pilots for gaming the system? Can the tower be more involved to redirect planes and pilots fined for purposely bypassing controls? It is a privilege to use our facility, not a right. Also, what is the status of charging out of town landing use fees to offset operating losses? End of comment from Arthur Bierman, Seabridge resident. The next comment we received is from Sandra Nagel. It reads, Dear Aviation Advisory Commission meeting, I would like to express my sincere disappointment at the planes that continue to fly over Westport at Mandalay Bay. I live on Twin Tides Place in the harbor, and we have the constant nuisance of planes flying over our home in a north to south direction and west to east direction. They are not even supposed to fly south of Woolley, which I am. They bank left over our community instead of right towards fields. We moved here just prior to the pandemic, and the consistent of these flyovers is increasing on a consistent basis. We need the air traffic controllers to constantly remind these flyers of their responsibilities to this community if they want to fly here. This also creates risks for the community. What if a plane crashes? What about the fuel exhaust being dropped on me, my patio furniture, and house? What about the noise? Some even fly so low that you almost feel you can see the pilot when they are banking and turning over my house. No kidding. Please help us to get these pilots to follow the recommended rules. This will make the communities surrounding the airport much happier. Thank you. End of comment from Sandra Nagel. And that concludes the written comments that were received. And at this time, Chair, we still do not see any raised hands from members of the public joining over Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Can we go on to item number 6, new business? Consider adoption of Resolution 16, authorizing remote teleconference meeting of the Aviation Advisory Commission pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, Subdivision E of the Ralph M. Brown Act, with the recommendation to consider adoption of Resolution 16, authorizing remote teleconference meetings. Mr. Director, did you have any other comments you wanted to add to the remote teleconference meetings?
I do, a few comments. So this would allow the commission to meet in December, although we typically do not meet in December, or the next meeting, which would then be January. I do want to point out that the remote conferencing is all tied to the governor's emergency order, which he has publicly advised he will terminate February 28th, 2023. So everything we're getting at this point is this commission could meet in January and February if we have meetings those months. And after that, it will have to resort back to in person. We do not have the capability equipment-wise to do a hybrid or anything like that. So it's all in or all out. And everything we're seeing is that we would be in person come the March meeting. And after that, presuming nothing changes with COVID and all the other things that you also see in the newspaper and news media that might change. But that's what we're hearing at this point. So this would allow at least a December or the next meeting up through February of 23 to do a teleconference meeting if the commission so desires. But that's it.
Can I ask one question? Would we go back to where would we have the meetings if they were in public? If they
Yes,
were public?
at this point, we are set up to house these meetings in the airport office at Camarillo. We have
Thank you.
the setup to handle the meetings.
Okay. Commission members, any comments?
Steve Weiss, I thought, and we had worked on this quite a bit pre-COVID, that we were going to consider the facilities at Oxnard Airport for our meetings in the future, but a lot's happened since then. So I don't know how that got taken off the
Yeah, I won't say that having it at the terminal building isn't an option. We just don't have chairs and a table and the equipment. It's here at Camarillo. Logistically wise, doesn't mean that we couldn't at some point move it to Oxnard terminal building if that's the desire. Obviously, again, our staff is here, the equipment's here. It just logistically makes it more challenging. Not that it can't be done.
So the meetings would be held at the airport offices?
That is correct. 555 Airport Way at Camarillo Airport.
One other question I had, because those meetings are by definition open to the public, there was some question in the past about access to the room. Now, does that elevator still work for those who would not wish to use the stairs?
Yes, our elevator lift does operate. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the advisory commission? Okay.
I move
Yeah,
to approve.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Roll call, please.
Chair Vondergraaf, you do
Yes.
have a member of the public wishing to speak on this item. Would you like us to promote him?
Yes, please do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ben D. Benedetto, please give us a moment to promote you. Okay, and if you can please unmute, show your screen if you'd like, Mr. D. Benedetto, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm there somewhere.
How do you do, Mr. Di Benedetto? It's good to
Hi,
see you
good
this
evening.
evening.
Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to speak. I actually was not aware that this piece of business involved going from teleconferencing to physical conferencing, which I'm fine with. The issue for me is that the primary goal of this commission is to relate the airport issues to the community, gain feedback, work with the airport, and make resolutions or at least recommendations on what they feel the county through the authority board should approve or not approve. Given that, access to the meetings is really important. And I think that if you're going to have an Oxnard Airport advisory commission meeting, it should be held in Oxnard. It's just a lot easier for people to get there. They don't have to travel to another community. And it may seem like a small item, but I've been involved in community boards and these kind of things for many, many, many years. And accessibility is really key on getting community involvement. So I would request that you think about the Oxnard meetings being held in Oxnard. And that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Di Benedetto. Any other any other public comments?
None at this time, Chair.
Chairwoman, if I could just real quickly, I just want to mention, we've talked about this before, the desire to have a hybrid format so that people could participate and make it as easy for people to participate as possible. And Director Freitas, I'll just again put that request in. I think it's something every organization has worked with through COVID. My church has struggled with that, but people have been able to figure out a solution. The Board of Supervisors does it that way. So maybe we can parlay off their technology and what the Board of Supervisors does, because I think having a hybrid format to allow people to dial in who, for whatever reason, can't make the meeting would be.
Let me clarify that
Yeah.
for everybody. The change is only for the commission members. You have to be live. We still would have call-in and YouTube opportunities for members of the public. So that doesn't change. It's just all of you need to be live in the public area. So that's what changes. We don't have the equipment or the technology to do the hybrid. When I talk about hybrid, that's having you members, but again, that's also not allowed by what the new change is going away from what the governor allows in public meetings. So we don't have that opportunity come March 1st, at least as it stands right now. But members of the public, they still would have that access via the phone or YouTube to call in if they had questions or comments.
Thank you, Director Freitas. And to quote the great Rosanna Dana, never mind.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want
Chair-
to also ask the question. I mean, this commission represents both Camarillo and Oxnard, and the Department of Airports main office is on the Camarillo Airport. Just wanting to clarify that for, it represents both airports, not just Oxnard.
Chair
That's-
Vondergraaf, you
Yes.
We do have another member of the public, Thomas McNally, wishing to speak. Would you like us to promote him?
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll start over because I've unmuted. Mr. Freitas and company, thank you for coming to the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, and giving a presentation. We appreciate it much. On the subject of what Steve Tannehill brought up is, let's see, I can start my camera too, can I? Start video. There. Please maintain the Zoom part too. Keith, you had said that you would do YouTube, but Zoom allows me to call in and say something. And I wanted you to make sure that that was still going to be as part of your hybrid model. We use it for many meetings in the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. We actually did the meeting that you were presenting at that way. So please stay with the hybrid. Thank you.
Mr. Director, can you please clarify, will Zoom still be maintained for the public with the meetings at February and afterwards, even though the members of the commission will have to meet in person?
Anna, can you confirm we had that capability prior?
Well, prior we were at Camarillo City Hall. There was no Zoom participation at Camarillo City Hall, but we have tested the technology here at the Department of Airports, and the members of the public should be able to participate virtually if they'd like.
That means, to clarify precisely, that would be via Zoom, correct?
Via Zoom, yes.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from the public?
None at this time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, Jerry Everson. I find it odd. I keep on looking at this, and there's a recommendation from Robert Levin, Ventura County Health Officer, but it's a year ago. The letter, is there any way to update that? See what he says again? You're working on something that's a year old.
Well, COVID keeps changing, and now there's 2 or 3 new versions of it. So COVID might be very different from, month to month to year to year. So I don't know if there is a possibility or not.
Redo his little thing here about his recommendation.
Yeah, what you have is the most current recommendation. That it just hasn't changed. We're expecting that to change soon. That's
Yeah,
kind of what I
it's a year old for crying out loud. Yeah.
Steve Weiss, I think some of these comments are a little premature, and we're wasting a lot of time because we're just voting on the extension of resolution number 16, authorizing remote teleconference meetings. So let's stay on point. We can go on.
Excuse me, the letter from Robert Levin has nothing to do with it.
Now, prior to your signing on to this commission, I was all over that. So believe me, I know where you're coming from. Director Freitas will tell you that. So, I mean,
No, I'm just
we were having special meetings just to extend the 30-day program. So we finally came to an understanding how ridiculous that was.
Yeah, but I just think it's ridiculous to have something a year old that you're talking about that hasn't been updated in a year.
This is government. It doesn't really update that quickly. It's kind of incremental. Nothing's changed. It's kind of, we have lots of documents that are much older that we continue to.
We're talking about this document right now.
I know, but he just said the governor has extended it till February. So we're just voting to continue our Zoom meetings for
If you're
December.
going to rely on something that's a year old, it's time to find out something different or have the man, make a new recommendation after a year of, being, a year ago when he made this recommendation.
Well, I think in this particular point, the public still is allowed to meet in person or remote, and the only real change is that the actual members of the commission need to meet in person. So perhaps we can table this for right now and move on to our next item.
Call for the question.
Okay, is there, at this point, we are asking for an adoption of Resolution 16 authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Aviation Advisory Commission pursuant to the Government Code Section 54953, subject to the Ralph M. Brown Act, and that applies for the months of December, when we normally do not meet, and January. As of February, the commission will meet in person, while the public can choose to meet in person or remotely as the public chooses.
I believe Keith was just giving us an update of that
Yeah.
could be on the horizon based on the governor's recommendation.
Correct.
So right now, we're just considering the adoption of resolution for the next meeting, as I understand it.
That is correct. I'm just clarifying for those who may not be completely clear on the issue. So for right now, the 6A, is there a motion to approve?
Chair, we have a motion in a second already.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Vondergraaf,
Approve?
Vice Chair Williams,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Matthew Johnston,
Aye.
Lynette Metz,
Aye.
Gerald Abramson,
Aye.
Steve Weiss,
Aye.
Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's go on to item 6B, approval and award of consultant services contract to Aviation, a Wolpert company, in the lump sum of $150,440 for facility assessment of air traffic control tower at Oxnard Airport, authorization for Director of Airports, a designee, to execute the subject contract, and authorization for auditor controller to process the necessary budgetary transactions. Mr. Director?
I will kick it to Aaron from our office. Aaron, please.
Thank you, Chair Vondergraaf, Commission members, Aaron Powers, Projects Administrator. If we could go to the next slide, we'll sort of jump right into why we have this request before you. So the Oxnard Airport Air Traffic Control Tower is a building that is approximately 64 years old. It already has identified renovations and repairs just noted by staff, including HVAC deficiencies and efficiencies, non-compliant fire sprinklers and escape ladder systems. We also unfortunately have a bit of a termite problem and some structural damage, but it's a very difficult thing to schedule with air traffic controllers and the hours of operations to make those repairs. And then there's also the FAA has a federal contract tower program that identifies certain security requirements for air traffic control towers related to facility fencing, gate installations, even how doors open and how the hinges are placed in order to meet FAA requirements. So we don't currently meet those. So we would be looking to assess what it would take to meet those requirements and improve sort of the access into, out, lighting, plumbing. Also, the tower is not an ADA compliant facility as it was built in the 60s. There's no ability but up a narrow stairway up to the air traffic control tower cab. And it also is not the most efficient energy wise. Right now, in the last 5 to 7 years, the airport has paid out of pocket from our airport enterprise fund for some improvements. And in those 5 to 7 years, we've paid out over $300,000 doing roof replacements and also meeting certain OSHA requirements for our railings around the exterior and top levels of the facility. And so we are excited at the possibility to move forward with a condition assessment with Aviation in the sum of a little over $150,000 that we may be able to, in the next 2 grant cycles, compete in the federal tower program for funding to assist us, not only to reimburse us for the assessment, but also to help us make these repairs that are identified. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Committee questions?
So, yeah, so what this shows again and again, and it's on the heels of Commissioner Abramson's comments, that we seem to be reactive instead of proactive. I mean, this is behind the times because this has been going on, but maybe at some time it would make me feel really good if somehow we could get on top of these things and be proactive and not waste all this money and get on top of things.
Absolutely, that is the position that we would like to take as well. As I said, we have identified issues over the years and have been addressing them, but this is a facility that is older. We also have, one of the things I like to point out is that currently the FAA does not pay rent for these facilities. So for the privilege of having the air traffic control towers here at our general aviation airport, we provide the premises, but it's all but we are still responsible for the maintenance and utilities that go along. So we do participate in maintaining the building. It's just a matter of identifying, getting a better grasp and a plan for much needed improvements to modernize the building.
And Commissioner Weiss, I would argue that this is actually our step in getting ahead of it. Doing an assessment, we know that, as Aaron had identified, there are some issues, but this is our opportunity to get ahead of and having an outside entity come in and do a full assessment of all of the systems and the whole structure so that we can plan ahead for things that, as a 64-year-old building will bring to us some of those challenges, so we can plan for those and request some funding to mitigate those in advance. So anyway.
So my comment would be somewhat similar, and then I have an additional comment, which is, I understand this, and I read in the write-up there may be asbestos, there may be lead paint, so it makes sense to me, but I was unaware of this. And I guess what I would ask is that we do a periodic, and maybe we do a periodic assessment and bring that information before the commission so that we understand what's coming down the pike. I mean, the first I heard about it was a week ago when I got my packet, and we're looking to spend $150,000. So I guess I would ask that we do a comprehensive review of our buildings and put these on the table ahead of time so we know what's coming. So there's that comment. And then the other question I have is, how do we set price for this? $150,000 to, assess this building. I mean, I'm not a contractor, but it seems rich. And I understand we have an exclusive with Aviation, but how do we set price? How do we determine whether it should be 150, 125, 100? How do we assess what's fair market value for an assessment like this?
Sure, that's a great question. So we did solicit a proposal from Aviation, but we also solicited an independent fee estimate for the scope of work from an independent estimator. And then we compare those prices, we compare the proposals, and Aviation's was under and in line with the independent fee estimate.
Thank you.
Jerry Abramson, how long is it supposed to last? When is it supposed to be submitted, the report?
So the report is expected to take 4 to 6 weeks to develop once the contract is in place and the notice to proceed is issued. And then once we have the report, it will include the recommendations for repair or replacement for the different structural or equipment in the tower, along with cost estimates that will help us be able to prioritize and potentially use that to identify what's most needed, whether we end up with a grant or not. It will help us with our programming for the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Comments from the public?
Yes, I'm going to read an announcement, and then we do have one member of the public wishing to speak. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6B, please press the raise hand button now, or if you are calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And right now we will promote Mr. Ben Di Benedetto.
Mr. Di Benedetto?
Unmute. And I'll torture you with my face here. Thank you so much. I don't have any problem with how you work this out. I understand that, it's facilities information. It's very important to the operation of the airport. And not all general aviation airports have a tower, from my understanding. So I think that's a good thing. And I'm sure you guys will work it out on how you establish value. I have a potential concern. I'm not over the cliff on this, but I think it needs to be brought up. I was a little surprised when the supervisor appointed Mr. Johnston from CAU as a member of the commission. And I had a very good face-to-face conversation with Mr. Nafty right after that. And Mr. Nafty said that Mr. Johnson was a smart guy, wanted to help the community, well understood the issues at the airport, considerably so, and from particularly the point of view of the flight schools and how to comply. And I have to say that I agree with that. I've seen Mr. Johnson on these meetings, and I've heard his comments, and I think Mr. Nafty has that pretty much nailed down. So I do not object to Mr. Johnson personally. However, I can see an issue arising on some of these things that will come up where he may or may not vote. One of the things Mr. Nafty said was he can always recuse himself on sensitive votes, and that's true. Although that's a judgment call. And when you have a judgment call in a public forum, you have the potential for some kind of issue coming up. I do think Mr. Johnson is a great addition to the board, and I think he'll be quite helpful. My suggestion would be that anything that relates financially to the airport and directly financially to CAU or any of the other flight schools, that Mr. Johnson recuse himself on those issues. And this happens to be one of those issues. I doubt anybody with a sane mind would not want this tower to be in the best of shape. So I don't really see this as a controversial issue with Mr. Johnson's vote, but I do want to put the point out there that I think we need to establish some ground rules when potential conflicts of interest can come up. It's come up in the past, and I'm sure it'll come up again in the future. So I just want us to be prepared for that, and for Mr. Johnson in particular to give some thought on how he may feel the best way to go about that is. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
There are no further hands raised at this time.
Okay. So the recommendation was to approve the and award the consultant services to Aviation, to authorize the director of airports or designee to award the subject contract, and authorize the auditor controller to process the necessary budget transactions, which included buildings and improvements, transfer out of expense budget, transfer into expense budget, and unrestricted net position. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Steve Weiss.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Vandergraaf,
Aye.
Vice Chair Williams,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Aye.
Matthew Johnston,
Aye.
Nanette Metz,
Aye.
Gerald Abramson,
Aye.
Steve Weiss,
Aye.
Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move on to item C, consider effectiveness of Aviation Advisory Commission and Camarillo Oxnard Airport Authority. Mr. Director, I believe this is yours.
Madam Chair, yes, thank you. So back in February, the Board of Supervisors requested that the Department of Airports specifically look at the effectiveness and efficiency of our multiple commissions, so the Aviation Advisory Commission, the Camarillo Airport Authority, and the Oxnard Airport Authority, seeing and believing there might be some redundancy in that. So basically, I am recommending no changes to the committees. There was discussions of maybe disbanding the AAC and combining that somehow with the airport authorities. But because those are tied to joint powers agreements, very convoluted, and that would kind of change the balance as they were originally designed, at least envisioned with a joint powers agreement between cities of Oxnard and Camarillo. So in the end, my recommendation, because the feedback the airports department gets from the AAC is different than we really see from the airport authority. My recommendation is that we continue with those committees as is, but we meet less frequently, depending on what the demand is. So my idea is that we probably meet every other month in general, but we still have the meeting ability if something urgent, timely comes up that we could meet. But we would work to basically bring the agendas, January, pass on February, come in March, that kind of thing. Again, unless something urgent, timely needed to come up, we would have a meeting in those off months. If you go back and look at a lot of our agendas, we carry a lot of items from the previous month to the next month, and it's kind of just you see it multiple times. So we have to be more efficient on our side. But that's my recommendation will be to the board, that we make no changes, at least to the groups as they are. Again, in our opinion, the feedback is important, and it's another opportunity for community members to provide input. So that's all I have at this point, unless there's any questions.
Comments from the commission?
Steve Weiss, yeah, I have a comment here. I think, first of all, the some of the new members of the Board of Supervisors need to be schooled on what the duties are of the AAC and the authorities. And it wasn't that long ago that through lots of work through this group, chaired by Bob Trimborn, that we came up with new bylaws, et cetera, that really outline what we're doing. There is no overlapping, and we're a good check and balance. We're merely a body that makes recommendations. We don't nix anything, and I take offense that that was put forth by the Board of Supervisors. And as far as Director Freitas's recommendations, that's fine as long as that things aren't ramrodded through outside of the oversight of the AAC.
Yes, the intent would be to have meetings, the same with the airport authorities. So it's similar to we have as it goes through the AAC and the airport authorities. That would be the intent.
Other comments from the commission?
I have a comment. I would just say, on the one hand, I'm sympathetic to the fact that there is some duplication and some of the same items get presented twice. But I would note we only meet once a month, as does the authority, and these are the chances for the public to hear what's going on and to speak to us about what's going on. In the write-up, Director Freitas, you said it costs staff 5 hours a month to hold the second meeting. And honestly, that's 3% of one person's time, a half a day for one person every month. And to me, it's time well spent. There may be some redundancy and there may be some repetitiveness of it, but to allow the public the opportunity to hear what's going on and to speak as to what's going on, I think is important. And especially as we enter next year, where we're going to have 2 150 studies on both airports. We have the Cloud9 project coming online. Channel Islands Aviation has new ownership and they're contemplating new construction. And we have 2 new supervisors who are going to be seated, which could result in 4 new commission members. There's a lot going on, and I think it warrants us continuing to meet monthly as we have.
So I'd like to clarify, it's not 5 hours. Remember, it's both meetings, so it's 25 hours per month. So we're not talking about one or the other. The meetings would still happen together in that month. So by removing one, it's 25. And you do bring up other good points, is that's on top of the meetings that we will be doing for the public for the Part 150, for the ALP update, things like that. So that's in addition to, so we're going to have a lot of information coming out. So it's not void of any of these, it's in addition to. So we do have a lot of opportunity for folks to comment. Again, 2 airports, Part 150 studies, and Camarillo also has the ALP update that's coming. So
with respect, I think those are targeted special things and merit all the attention they're going to get. Things I'm very happy about, excited about, which I know you were instrumental in bringing to the community. So good things. But these are publicly owned airports. They are funded with federal tax dollars to a great degree. I think it's important that we keep, in my mind, 2 meetings that often don't even last an hour every month is not too much to ask for all of us to do, to keep the public involved and for us to be able to address as a group in an organized fashion all of these topics that are in front of us.
This is Matt Johnson. As a new member to the commission, I think want to kind of echo what Mr. Weiss said, that I think as long as we stay in our lane and we pay attention to those duplicative kind of topics so that we're most effective with staff's time and respectful to everyone's time, It is important to hear from the public. It is important to, I think, provide an advisory kind of mindset to the authority. But I think to Mr. Weiss's comments, the bylaws and kind of making sure that we stay in the lane is important.
This is Steve Weiss again. I think the Department of Airports needs to be consistent, and they were very supportive of having that extra meeting to extend the 30-day notice for a virtual meeting. And that was no big deal because I brought it up every single meeting until finally we looked at it a different way and we said until the next meeting instead of in a 30-day period. So if that was fine, I don't see what the big deal is about having these meetings, Director Freitas.
Any other comments from the commission?
Chair, you do have members of the public wishing to speak. Would you like to hear
Okay.
those now?
Yes, please do. Let's have that one at a time, please.
Okay, perfect. I will read a statement while we have those two individuals promoted. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6C, please press the raise hand button now, or if you are calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And we are currently promoting Susan Nickel and Ben D. Benedetto. And Ms. Nickel, we'll go ahead and start with you. If you'd like to unmute, show your screen if you'd like. And when you start speaking, the timer will begin.
Okay, thank you. I've spoken before, and I wanted to address my support for Steve Weiss and the other gentleman that talked about, you know, keeping the meetings going. Oxnard, we pretty much feel like the stepchild here. And the last meeting, I know you guys give up hours, so do we. I work full time, and I just planned for tonight to listen to everything effectively and get through it. We have our neighborhood network here. I live on West Woolley. We are inundated with the flight schools that have disregard for all the guidelines for the past 2 years. In these meetings, we've tried to be proactive on, but you can't let us go. We need these meetings. It may be some hours out of your time. It's more hours out of our time. And it's also hours out of our effective work time. I literally, as I have said before, have to shut down teaching because the flyovers, if there's 2 planes, can come every 2 to 3 minutes. And I can't hear my students. They can't hear me. And we're all experiencing this. It's pretty brutal in this one little quadrant. And even on our neighborhood network, you know, a lot of people who don't live within the few blocks that we're affected by don't understand. We get a lot of assaults to our opinions, but this really is a matter of quality of life. And last meeting, I had mentioned something about planes that were flying illegally, non-registered. And Steve Weiss said, wait, you know, what are they? I wasn't allowed to speak again. But those planes have had their registration numbers. One wasn't even registered from some place out of Missouri. It was flying over here. And these have all been reported, but nothing, no response, nothing has happened. And it's so frustrating to us because we want to have a voice, but we want to have a response. And as responsible citizens, why should we be at the mercy of the flight schools who blatantly disregard what we have offered as alternative flight paths? Thank you.
Next comment, please.
Mr. D. Benedetto, if you'd like to unmute, show your screen if you like, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I agree with everything everybody said, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Tannehill, Mr. Weiss, and Ms. Nickel, the last lady to speak. But and the opportunity that we've had is to speak to you on these meetings. And it's very important that that continue on a monthly basis, not on an every other monthly basis, because they're recommending, they being you, are recommending actions to the other board, and their meeting is so close to your meeting that they can't possibly meet the Brown Act requirements, posting a new agenda item on their next meeting following your meeting. The time frame doesn't allow for it. So we need to meet every month so that they can get it at least not on their next meeting, but the 130 days from that. So that's one thing. The other thing is you're cutting 50% of the opportunity of the community to speak. Can't do that. I mean, we really, especially in the face of the 150 study that the neighborhood councils this time will be sending representatives and participating in and disseminating that information in a much quicker manner than the 1998 study. The other issue is, I find it stunning that in the February meeting, this past February, that Kelly Long was the supervisor that suggested that the airport staff take a look at this, because she signed as chair of the Board of Supervisors the last rendition of the bylaws, and Article 5 says, purpose, the bylaws state that the role of the commission is to advise the board on technical, operational, financial, and policy matters, that they are to represent the people of Ventura County, and that they are to consider the social, economic, environmental effects of its recommendations. So that just says you need to be dealing more with the public than you do with the airport. The airport is going to give you their items. They're going to be solid items that need to be discussed, but the public needs the ability to put things on the agenda for you as well by suggesting those to you, and you looking at those and balancing, do they need more clarification here? Is there some other way to go with this? And that hasn't happened. I've sent letters asking that things be put on the agenda. Hasn't happened. We've made all kinds of requests in all kinds of formats. Hasn't happened. My suggestion to remedy this is to have one of the commissioners act as the secretary and deal with the coordination of the material that goes on the agenda, not excluding the airport, including whatever it is they want to have on there, but also include things from the public when you get requests that don't get proper agenda attention. So that would be my suggestion. And
15
again,
seconds, Mr. Di Benedetto.
you do have 4 new members coming in, and they may feel the same way. So I would, I think long and hard before I approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Di Benedetto. Are there any other comments from the public?
There are no further hands raised at this time.
Okay, any further comments from the commission? Okay, this was a consider effectiveness of the Aviation Advisory Commission and the General Oxnard Camarillo Airport Authority. Mr. Director, did you want, since this does not require action at this point, did you want any other anything else at this point?
No, we were just looking for your feedback. We got it. Understand.
Okay. Let's then move on to item D, receive and file presentation on current airport planning projects for Camarillo and Oxnard Airport. This is a receive and file presentation on current airport planning projects for Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Mr. Director, comments on this?
We've got Aaron from our department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Commission members. I'm happy to be here tonight just to give a high-level overview of where we're at since our last update in July earlier this year. As many of you may recall, we started with a Camarillo Airport master plan that in May of this year, the FAA indicated that they would allow us to transition that plan to an airport layout plan update. And within a month or so, the FAA also indicated in discussions with us that funding may be able to be available for a noise study for Camarillo Airport, which is one of the biggest issues that commented on during the kickoff of the master plan. With that in mind, in July, the airport reported to your commission shared the plan to move the ALP update forward in coordination with the noise studies. And so we turned our focus to securing those noise studies so that we could coordinate these items together. So in July of this year, when we shared that plan about the ALP update, we also requested from your commission and the recommendation for the board to authorize the airport to accept and sign for federal grants for noise studies for Camarillo and Oxnard airports, to be able to apply and sign for matching Caltrans grants, and also approval to enter into a consultant contract with Kaufman once the grants were received. So we did we did receive our federal grant in August of 2022. We also turned around, and once we had that in hand, applied to Caltrans in August and received Caltrans grants by the end of the month. In September, now that we had secured the funding, we executed the consulting contracts with Kaufman, and we issued the notice to proceed in early October. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. With the notice to proceed in place, we have initiated trying to map out how we're going to kick off 3 rather significant planning studies sort of concurrently. And so what we have here, and I do apologize, it's a lot of information. We actually will be posting this soon to our website. We will be getting this will be translated into Spanish, and once it's available in both languages, we'll be posting that very shortly to our website so that we can get this information out there. But this is a high-level graphic that shows an overview of the planning process. And the key things to note is that you can see that we have the months along the top of each planning study to sort of indicate the overall estimated plan time. We also have key elements of the studies noted along the left in a list format. And then along the bottom of each study, we have something called phases. And we did this to sort of be able to sort of break down for ourselves and also for the public to understand that we sort of see a 3-phase process. And at this point, I'm going to actually ask staff to move to the next slide for a moment. And so we sort of see this as a 3-phase deal. We have a pre-work phase, a study phase, and then a documentation phase. So the pre-work phase involves all that contracting, the collection of facility information, some of those items that are shown in the pre-work phase when we get back to the last graphic. It will also include some noise information, and all of that is so that we can develop the initial materials that we'll be sharing with the public in the study phase. So when we get to the study phase, we will be sharing that collected information on the airport and the noise, and we will be evaluating alternatives and select a recommended plan during that process. And that will really be where we dig in and we conduct public coordination meetings to solicit feedback. Director Freitas has been out there letting everyone know that we anticipate that to be that the first public coordination will kick off towards in the first quarter of 2023. We believe that's going to be more towards the end of that quarter, but we are planning to come back to this body in January with more detailed information on schedule and meetings, so that we can have Kaufman do a presentation that gives an overview of what to expect and some key time frames that folks might really be interested in. And then I'll jump to the documentation phase. This is after a lot of that study phase where we've solicited feedback, we've listened to the community, we'll prepare draft documents. There'll be an opportunity for local and FAA review, conducting additional meetings and responding to comments and making any changes to those plans before we try to submit final documents. If we could go back one slide to, yes, thank you. I do want to point out that while I say it's a three-phase process, for the ALP, that's very straightforward. We show a pre-phase, a study phase, and a documentation phase. But for the noise studies, it has one pre-work phase. We actually do have a study, and then we have 2 study phases and 2 documentation phases. I just wanted to call that out because we do have a dual process, because the noise study produces 2 books. So we'll have essentially one pathway and 1 book development that focuses on the NEMs, or the noise exposure maps, and the information involved there. And so we will have the study and documentation phase related to that. And we will also have, though, a study and documentation phase focused on the noise compatibility plan. And then throughout that, we do have opportunities for public engagement, PAC meetings, technical education meetings for members of that PAC. And so right now we're deep in the pre-work phase, and we're really working on the scheduling details and how everything is going to map out. And we look forward to sharing more information about how these are all going to develop with you in January. And as part of that too, part of our pre-work phase is we also are doing website development so that we can have a website devoted to this information, so it can easily be accessed, materials available, and information and meeting dates as it's populated, available for the public to view in advance. And with that, I'd be happy to see if anyone has any comments or questions that I can see how best to answer.
Any comments or questions from the committee?
I would just say this is very exciting, and I'm pleased to see it. I am curious on how we bring the public in, and I want to be sure we do bring the public in at the earliest possible moment. So, we had a comment from one resident as to planes going over her house, and I think even from the beginning, deciding where are the noise impact zones and where are we going to measure? I hope we bring the public in from the beginning so that we're all on the same page as to where we're looking, how we're looking, and that kind of thing. Is that a fair consideration?
It is, and we obviously the consultant follows the FAA guidelines in each of these projects, but that specific item has already been discussed multiple times with our consultant. That we've heard it. We know that the community wants to be involved as soon as they can. So, and I'll go further. Again, these are very scripted processes that the FAA outlines. We, out of our own pocket, have added additional public input process points because we know how important it is to our communities. So I'll leave it there.
That's wonderful to hear, and I support that because, and I get it. As exciting as this is, I'm also mindful that it might indeed be scripted by the FAA, and that may not be a perfect fit with our community. And so if we can take advantage of what they're paying for, what they're willing to do, but also supplement it as appropriate with what we know we need in our communities, I think that would be optimal. And it sounds like you're doing that.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? Comments from the public?
Thank you, Chair. I'll read the statement for the public. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6D, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And Chair, we do not see any raised hands at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Receive and file.
This is receive and file. Thank you. Let's move on to item E, receive and file a staff update regarding fly-friendly Ventura County and noise management system.
And we have Jeanette with us from the airport department.
Hi,
Hello,
Jeanette.
everyone. Good evening. Have you go to the next slide, please. All right, I am Jeanette Haregi. I know I've met many of you in person. I've met many of you online. The meetings in September, but I'm happy to be here tonight to present to all of you on the progress of our Fly Friendly VC and our new noise management system. So next slide, please. So what is Fly Friendly VC? Fly Friendly VC is a national program implemented locally by the Ventura County Department of Airports and focuses on two key goals: addressing noise-related concerns from the community and connecting with and nurturing community relationships with improved communication efforts, specifically with regard to noise. How does it work? I'll go into more detail shortly about these components, but the main components of Fly Friendly VC are education and training, enhanced and ongoing communication from DOA staff to pilots, flight schools, and the community, and established expectations, which go hand in hand with the educational component and is also tied to the final component of the program, which is accountability. Fly Friendly VC was launched on September 13th with an informational workshop inside the terminal at Oxnard Airport, during which educational materials and discussions regarding expectations related to the implementation of the program were provided to those in attendance. We invited the 36 flight schools that our team identified as Oxnard and Camarillo Airport users, and also to local independent pilots. Next slide, please. Since the September 13th launch, the implementation of Fly Friendly has included continued distribution of the pilot guides, which you see here, for Oxnard and Camarillo. These guides serve as a primary educational component of the program and provide alternate flight patterns for pilots and flight schools utilizing Oxnard and Camarillo. The flight patterns are designed to minimize residential overflights and balance air traffic so that no single community is inundated. That balance includes more right turn traffic and, when left turn traffic is in place, an extension of at least 1/2 mile beyond the shoreline before a turn. The distribution of material has been through targeted mailings to all 36 flight schools previously mentioned, and ongoing communication with those flight schools, which includes trainings for those who did not attend the September 13th event. Those trainings are currently in the works and will be completed in the coming weeks. Another aspect of the implementation is ongoing communication and engagement with the community. We recognize that this has been lacking, and we know that the task of rebuilding and strengthening trust is in our hands. As part of our commitment, we've responded to feedback from the community regarding the pilot guides with a couple of updates that you can see here, which include adding red markings over the residential areas to make it clear that those areas are noise sensitive areas. And B, we've defined what well past the shoreline means. The original version of the pilot guides used the verbiage fly well past the shoreline, and the community asked us to make that clearer. We spoke to local flight schools as well as the tower manager in Oxnard and came up with the agreement that the verbiage should be changed to read, fly at least 1/2 mile past the shoreline. Again, we know we have more work to do, but this is just one example of our commitment to making this program work for both the community and for the pilots and flight schools in the area. Next slide, please. This image is an example of additional educational material we are distributing to show that what we are asking pilots not to do, which is to not engage in an abundance of touch and go loops and to not extend turns in traffic directly over residential areas. Again, this is material that we are sharing with the 36 flight schools that we've identified that use Oxnard and Camarillo airports, and it's part of our continuous education. Next slide, please. So what are we seeing so far? The photo on the left is a screenshot of the air traffic out of Oxnard Airport from September 10th to September 11th, so Saturday and Sunday window, which was the weekend before the launch of Fly Friendly BC. The image, and you'll see in that image that there's a lot less, right turn traffic. There is some right turn traffic, but there's a heavier load of left turn traffic and traffic directly over, residential communities and Oxnard Shores. Among those communities where there's a lot of traffic there. On the right, you'll see air traffic on Saturday, October 29th and Sunday, October 30th. So less than 2 months into the program launch, a lot more right turn traffic and a lot less traffic over the shores in those neighboring communities. So we are seeing improvement. And again, I'll reiterate that, you'll hear me acknowledge this quite a bit. We still have a lot more work to do, but we're pressing hard on the educational component of this right now and are in regular communication with the team in the tower in Oxnard to ensure that Fly Friendly BC flight patterns are being followed whenever possible, and to better understand certain days when we are seeing heavier traffic over residential communities and what we can do to address and improve that. Sometimes it's a matter of safety, simply because of the number of planes in the pattern or because of incoming or outgoing traffic from Camarillo. And but we know this is a collaborative effort and we're working to see continued progress. Next slide, please. So here I'm introducing you to the Vector Noise and Operations Management System, or VNOMS. So what is VNOMS and how does it work? VNOMS is operated by Vector Airport Systems and improves the management of Fly Friendly BC by allowing our team to track flights in real time, in addition to finding details on past flights, including altitude, flight paths, and information related to aircraft operators. VNOMS helps us identify flights of concern and investigate overflights and altitude. It also serves as a single system to manage and report on noise comments from the community, making it a much more effective method for us to identify where we need to target our work. With Fly Friendly BC, for example, we can see what's working and what isn't, and where we might need to pivot to improve the program. While the system is extremely helpful for Fly Friendly BC and working with our neighbors in Oxnard, I want to also mention that it's very helpful as we continue our work with our neighbors in Camarillo as well, who are concerned with jet traffic and altitude. Next slide, please. So we've been working internally with VNOMS since October 1st and spent that month testing and training the system. Last week on November 1st, we officially launched the public-facing element, which allows the public to directly submit a noise comment and tracking flights. Again, having the noise comment submission and reporting system in a single place is critical to the efficiency and effectiveness of our noise mitigation efforts. The previous process included our team, and it was our ops team, and then me when I came on board. We were manually inputting all noise comments that were submitted to our website into our reporting system, which obviously isn't a very effective use of our time. So VNOMS eliminates that and also provides zero room for error when reporting. In these photos, you'll see the landing page on top for the community. That's the public-facing landing page. And then on the top, you'll see the noise comment form. I'm sorry, on the bottom, you'll see the noise comment form. We've received feedback already from the community with requests to improve the form. And one of those requests was in particular to see, you can't, I don't know how well you can tell on here, but the only information that's required is the information that has an asterisk next to it. And part of right here, it says first name and last name, and there's an asterisk. The public is welcome to type in anonymous or Oxnard resident or Camarillo resident. But that, we agree that with the public feedback that that's not clear here. And we don't want to deter people from submitting a noise comment. So I've already been in communication with the Vector team to see if it would be feasible to add a note, maybe under here, submit a noise comment, indicating that you can type anonymous. Because again, we don't want to deter folks from submitting a noise comment. We do want to hear from you. And I think, VNOT or Vector manages the system, but if there are, if we are receiving feedback, for reasonable changes like that, that's something we can definitely work with Vector to see if we can do that. So we are listening and trying to identify what changes will be feasible on Vector's end of things. Next slide, please. So our next steps, where do we go from here? We're ongoing education and training. Again, that's in place. We're meeting and training the flight schools that didn't attend the event. We're in continuous communication with them, whether it's mailings or email communication, increased engagement with the tower as well. We're in regular communication with the tower. A perfect example of that, was Friday, as folks here can attest to. There was helicopter activity on Friday, heavy helicopter activity Oxnard, and we were not notified. It was SoCal Gas doing survey work. We were not aware of that, but I called the tower and I was able to get information right away from the tower regarding that activity, so that I could communicate that to those who reached out to us and also put it on our social media. And so that's an example of our communication with the tower related to anything regarding air traffic. And then increasing community engagement. My role is to serve, as the kind of a liaison for the DOA with the community. And I'm committed to making sure that our lines of communication are open and that we're helping to rebuild and strengthen the trust with the community. And then we have the Part 150 noise studies for Camarillo and Oxnard that you're all aware of. And then, in a few months, we're going to shift to the accountability phase. And that includes, once all the flight schools have been educated and they've gotten all the information to implement Fly Friendly VC. And, if we see some egregious, flight patterns or flight activity, we'll be communicating with them and making sure that we reiterate our expectations for the program. So, and I'm also going to add, Aaron mentioned that we're adding pages to our website. We're working to develop communication pieces for the public as well, and reworking the website as a whole to ensure that information from our office is easily accessible and easy to navigate. So, all of that information, whether it's our website, our communication pieces, I'm always looking for, constructive feedback on how we can do this better. That's my job, and that's my goal, to work with the community to do that. You've probably seen a few of the slides now, this Fly Friendly VC logo. We're trying to brand the program. Another way to, keep it in the forefront of the minds of the flight schools, the pilots, and the community. So thank you very much. You're muted.
Jeanette, that is extremely impressive. I have one question for you. I really like the goal also of noise assessments at Camarillo. I live in Camarillo. There's sometimes some confusion between aircraft who are coming into Magoo versus coming into Camarillo. When you are working with doing noise complaints and so forth in Camarillo, are you going to be able to determine where those aircraft are actually either landing or taking off from?
Yes, so when we look at a specific flight, we can see where it's, final destination.
Excellent. I think
So-
that's really important. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much. Comments from the commission?
Chair, can I add to that? I do want to, that's one of the things Jeanette touched on is the new system will tie, which is why the address of a caller is so important, is that the system will automatically tie when you made that complaint, the time to what it believes caused that noise comment.
That's very important.
That's a nice part of the system. It does exactly what you talked about. If there's a flyover going and, to say to Point Magoo, it would pull that together and help us identify who that is.
Yeah, and that speaks to, thank you for that, Keith, because I did leave that out. That speaks to the efficiency of the system versus our previous, way of getting through this. We get a noise comment. Again, we'd have to manually input it into our reporting system. And then we'd have to go search on a separate application to see what information we could get. So even if you, an exact address is the best option, but even if you put the street name or Oxnard Shores or something that gives the vicinity, closest vicinity as possible to that flight, like he said, it'll directly identify, or Camarillo, same thing with Camarillo. It'll directly identify a flight associated with that date, time, and location. So it just takes out all of those additional steps that we've been having to take to investigate a specific instance.
Oh, that's good.
The only thing I want to add again is, and you've heard us talk about a little bit before, is the magnitude of this program. So I appreciate that our neighbors want us to get through this faster, sooner than later. But the magnitude, Jeanette talks about the, 36 flight schools that operate at one of our two airports. Each flight school has 10 certified flight instructors on average, and those 10 flight instructors have 10 students. We're talking near 4,000 people that we're trying to educate. And if you talk to the flight schools, many of them lose their CFIs, half of them in a given 6-month period, and they lose half of their students. So there's this ever evolving, students that we've got to capture, get the message to, and continue with that. So, we, as Jeanette talked about, we're seeing some improvement, but we got a long way to go. We know that, the airport's been there for almost 90 years. Pilots have been doing what they've been doing for decades. And we're looking to tweak that. They're willing to work with us, but we got a lot of messaging to get out, education to do in the next several months. So we're seeing improvement. You see that so far, but as our neighbors are communicating, we still got a lot of work to go. We realize that. So that's it.
And in the next few months, once we've gone through, all of the flight schools that we've identified, I mean, the job really is, the educational component's never going to be done. We're going to work to continuously communicate with these flight schools. Do you have new staff? Do you have new flight instructors? Do you have, who do we need to get this information to? It's that portion of it's never going to be completed because we're committed to making this work for the foreseeable future.
That's excellent. Any other comments from the commission?
This is Matt. I just wanted to say, Jeanette, it's great having you on board, and Keith, the efforts that you and the staff have made in this short amount of time. I think one of the reasons that I've gotten engaged, I know Mr. Tannehill and I had met previously on several occasions and had discussions, but I think this is just evidence of how community and the aviation community can come together. And I think it's important to have this kind of a program in place, and the ongoing education you talked to, Jeanette, so that we can stay reasonable in the dialogues and the discussions and the solutions, and help to balance the outliers that both lie in the aviation community as far as their extreme views about, some of these topics or what should or shouldn't happen, as well as in the community and some of the extreme topics as well as what should or shouldn't happen. So I think these are great steps forward, and I really appreciate that it's a never-ending process, because it's very true what Keith said. The turnovers, and not just in the aviation community, but in the residential community, right? Where we have new people buying homes, we have all of these things occurring that everyone needs educated on, not just the aviation community, but also in the housing communities.
I'd like to add to that and just echo what Matt said. Jeanette, it's great having you on board, and I love what you're doing, and Matt, I appreciate your efforts to bring this around. And to your point, Channel Islands Neighborhood Council had their community meeting, and a full room. And Keith and Jeanette came and spoke and made a presentation, and I think it was well received. So I think we're on the road. I think we have good days, and we have days that aren't so good. But if we keep at it with good faith and goodwill, I think we're going to get there. Two quick questions for you, Jeanette. Tail numbers. Do you need the public to enter tail numbers? Can you, and then if a plane hides its tail number from FlightAware, are you still able to see the tail number?
So we don't have to have a tail number identified from the public. However, there's a section that says additional comments, and if you happen to grab the tail number, you're welcome to include it in that section of the noise comment. But it's not necessary, because again, the public facing portion of this will not show the tail number, but it will on our end. So when Steve, if you submitted a noise comment, put your address in, the time and the day were accurate, the system's going to automatically identify the activity and the tail numbers and all of that. So yes, that's the answer to both your questions, I believe.
Thank you very much. Yes, it is.
And also, really quick, Jeanette and Keith, I was remiss in mentioning, when I saw the 2-month comparison there, Jeanette, it's amazing the right traffic that's occurred. And I think definitely something needs to get back to the tower, because the tower staff has been doing an excellent job in participating in this as well. And I think that's demonstrated by the traffic patterns that you see there. So if staff could please let the tower know that we appreciate their involvement to support this as well.
I will add that there was a pizza day for the tower crew just last week.
Yes, we've been in communication with the tower, because we appreciate their role in this very much. They're a critical component of this, as you all know. And yes, they had lunch last week, and they were very appreciative of it, because they're really working to get this in place.
Well, I think that's a good example too of the community's input, talking about right traffic and kind of educating, and even the aviation community. I think we all agreed that, hey, we're willing to do more right traffic. We can do this. Everyone that flies out of Oxnard, but the third component with the tower, I think was really important. And now that we're all working together, it evidences itself that there's very little, as compared to 2 months ago, traffic on the left side. So great job.
Well, what I would add to that, Matt, again, in all fairness, I think Jeanette and Keith would agree. We have good days and bad days. And I think in the realm of no good deed goes unpunished, what we've kind of learned is different controllers have different levels of comfort with right traffic. So we're succeeding, we're drilling down further, and I won't name names, Keith and Jeanette know them, but some of the newer traffic controllers aren't, but they're getting comfortable, and they're just like we're trying to educate flight schools, we're trying to bring them along as well. And I think we anticipate success with that. So,
yeah. And it's an ongoing process, because the aviation community left traffic as the standard. So we get a new tower person in, we're going to have to work to train them equally. Community, aviation, and tower all have to work together to understand.
Well said.
Exactly. And that's part of the, when I talked about, discussions we have with the towers on those days that are a little rougher, we are working to try to understand what's going on, in those days and just, for myself in particular to have a better understanding of what they're up against in the tower. But also, so I can relay that back to the community and then, chat with the tower folks about what, if there is any hesitation for right traffic, what can we do? So.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? Public? Okay, let's move on to item F.
Oh, Chair Vondergraaf, yes,
Yes.
we do have members of the public. And I will read a statement and then we do have 2 written comments to read. If you wish
Okay.
to make a public comment on agenda item number 6E, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. The first written comment we received is from Rita Weingarten. It reads, good evening, my name is Rita Weingarten. I purchased my home in Oxnard Shores in April 2020. Before I purchased my home, I did my due diligence. I checked into airport noise and flight paths. When I checked the Oxnard Airport website in April 2020, there was a flight map that showed Oxnard Shores and surrounding neighborhoods to be a quote, avoid flyover, unquote area. Also, before I purchased my home, I drove to the Oxnard Airport. I saw the signage showing the same flight map, which distinctly reads, quote, avoid flyover, unquote, in Oxnard Shores and surrounding neighborhoods. This map that I saw was developed after a noise study was performed in 1998. This study was accepted and filed with the FAA. In April of 2021, that flight map was removed from the Oxnard Airport website. It's been living hell ever since. The noise from these small planes exceeds the city of Oxnard's noise ordinance and the state of California Health and Safety Code 68000, which states that noise levels above 65 decibels is dangerous for one's health. The state of California Health and Safety Code 68000 is enforceable by law. Taking the flight map down that was developed based on the noise study from 1998 is very wrong and misleading to the stakeholders in Oxnard Shores and surrounding communities. I can't understand why we are spending another $800,000 on a new noise study when the 1998 study was concluded and states to avoid flying over our homes. Thank you. End of comment from Rita Weingarten. The final written comment we received on this item is from Susan Tatum. It reads, I appreciate the effort being put into this situation, especially from those who were not part of creating the problem. However, these actions are far overdue and have yet to produce meaningful results. Although your efforts are entering the 3rd month, unimproved changes in flight patterns have been putting local residents in danger and lowering our quality of life for over 2 years. VNOMS has the potential to be an improvement, but it needs work. The complaint form creates confusion with long and irrelevant pick lists and is driving people away by requiring that users give up their names. Jeanette is working to get this fixed, but seriously, was this form tested with real users before launch? In the meeting packet, you say that, quote, DOA staff have noted significant improvements in residential overflights, unquote. This is not happening in my area of Oxnard Shores. Out of control touch and go flights continue to disrupt our lives on many days, making it impossible to enjoy our homes and conduct our business. The new extended pattern actually doubles the number of overflights by requiring planes to fly over us twice in each pass. And we now have an increase in planes cutting across on takeoff and helicopters doing the same thing, both outbound and inbound. I understand the sheer number and turnover of flight instructors and students makes improving the situation difficult and takes time. Therefore, all touch and go traffic should be temporarily halted until the noise and lead testing is completed. Thank you. End of comment from Susan Tatum. And we do not see any raised hands at the moment. And Chair, we did it go down? Okay, we did see a raised hand. Oh, okay, we're back. Barb Filkins is raising her hand and we will promote her to a panelist.
Go ahead, please.
Barb, excuse me, Barb, if you'd like to unmute, show your video
I am
and you'll have
unmuted.
3 minutes.
First of all, I think that between the tower and what the department has been doing in the last, ever since I'd say September, has had beneficial results. As an instructor, I have concerns, but at the same time, it's teaching students to fly the proper pattern and be aware of where they are. But I want to make one comment, which is I think that the community outreach needs to go both ways. Not only does the aviation community need to outreach as it's doing, but the residential community needs to reach back. And one of the problems I'm seeing is that there's a certain amount of misinformation that is coming forward from the residential community in terms of what they are disseminating. It may have gotten less, but some of the statements that have appeared, I'm a little worried about. So I will leave it at that for the moment. But I think that maybe the aviation community, the user community, needs its own PIO.
Thank you. Are there any further comments?
There are no further comments at this time.
No written comments?
No, the two that I read into the record were the only written comments received on this item.
Okay, are there any final comments from the commission?
Receive and file.
Okay, we will receive and file and move on to item F, which is the update regarding aviation leaded fuel. And Mr. Director, I know you have done work on this.
I have, so attached, and this is a receive and file as well, is a report. I won't go through the entire report prepared, but basically it's a history of motor gas and how that compares to aviation fuel. And I'll end with, obviously here to answer questions. There's many reports associated with the EPA doing analysis around and near airports. And I'll end with the most important item is that the FAA September 1st did approve a drop-in place fuel for all piston airplanes, GAMI fuel. We also have Swift fuel that expects to have a similar aviation fuel sometime next year. With all that now requires, and the move and the transition, much like we did with motor fuel from leaded to unleaded fuel, that took them 20 years. We expect that to be a lot less time to make this transition to aviation fuel. But it is a manufacturing distribution issue throughout the United States that's got to happen. So good news, it's coming. The transition is happening. Everybody wants leaded fuel out of the system as soon as we can, and it's happening. The last piece that I haven't put in here, but I will share for the first time with the committee, is that we are, I am going to recommend when we come up for our next rates and fees that unleaded fuel flowage fee be waived for next year as an opportunity for our distributors to bring that on board with an incentive in our commitment as a county. So you'll be seeing that next time we do rates and fees. Ultimately, it's up through the airport authority and on to the board of supervisors, but that's our piece of it. So I can answer any questions. Oh, lastly, I want to add, we are working with our distributor, Golden West, our FBO, fixed base operator at Oxnard, and Channel Islands Aviation here at Camarillo, both of which are working to bring unleaded fuel as an option as soon as they can. So they're working with their distributors, fuel suppliers as we speak right now to do that. Bring it for sale, both the airports, as soon as possible. So.
Will the unleaded fuel also work for twins?
Yes, GAMI at this point is a plug and place. Swift is not for the high performance airplanes at this point, but the GAMI fuel is at this point.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Other question? Yes.
That's an important question because the lower performance airplanes although they make 70% of the fleet, they only use 30% of the fuel. So the high performance airplanes that are 30% of the fleet, piston fleet, they use 70% or thereabouts of the fuel, the leaded fuel. So it's important that the new GAMI fuel was a key to all of this, in that it is operational and can be used in all piston airplanes at this point.
Great to know. Thank you. Other questions from the commission?
Keith, I think it's, first off, I commend you for the county's participation in the flowage fee, because I think a big part of this is getting the consumers, all the GA consumers, to, trust the products and accept them into their aircraft. And as long as there's alternatives that are not unleaded, the leaded fuel that everyone's comfortable with, because that's what everyone's been using for so long. So I think the airport's contributing to help the consumer to kind of buy into the unleaded product is going to be important. I think that's just an overall important topic for the whole aviation community, because the initial launches on these things are showing themselves to be more expensive than the leaded fuel.
For sure. And as I listed some of these reports, what we're expecting is that the EPA will come up with a finding in 2023. And in that finding will be a timeline to phase out the leaded aviation fuel. I mean, that's how they did with motor gas. That's what we would expect to see in the aviation. So if we can encourage it to speed that up locally, then we're going to do everything we can to partner with our aviation businesses and our users. Obviously, it's better for the community. We're going to do it.
I second that as well. I appreciate you throwing that out there, Director Freitas. And, I mean, I get it, I understand, but I think at the same time, we have to acknowledge that the best scientific evidence we have right now is that children within a half mile of the airport are getting elevated lead levels from this avgas. LA County just had an unleaded fuel week and offered every child free testing for lead. I did not see that Ventura County did that, but I think that's something Ventura County should do, because, there's a debate on this issue. And there'll be people who say it's really not a problem. But the Santa Clara study, the North Carolina study, said it is a problem. It's been recommended that we have the children tested. I think we should do that. And I just think we should keep that in mind, that every day that we're flying these leaded fuels over these schools, our best scientific evidence is that lead toxins are getting in the air and children are ingesting them. So the sooner we can stop this, the better.
I think we should caution some of our reference without data. And maybe Steve, you've got a report that I'm not aware of that demonstrates that children absolutely are affected by the airport lead fuel. I know there's a lot of both sides of this. Obviously, I'm in support of getting unleaded fuel. Just it's just one of those last toxics in our usages in our society. But I think that these are the areas where we've got to be caution, where the aviation community and others don't use extreme positions to overt consumers to get moved to unleaded fuel. I mean, my goal is hopefully to promote to all GA, it works, it's good, use it. We don't want to incite people with things that we don't found in strong scientific data.
No, I hear you, Matt, and it's a fair point, and one I respect. What I'm looking at is the Santa Clara study, which is a 10-year peer-reviewed study, and that's been well documented. And I've actually shared it with people who didn't really think lead was a problem, and they were not able to dispute it. And there was a study done in North Carolina. So those are the two scientific studies that people refer to. Again, one way to get clarity which the county of LA did, is they said any child who feels they're exposed to lead, come in for a free test. And that would be one thing we could do. And then we would know, are the children around our two airports within a half a mile? Do they have elevated levels of lead or not? Now, to your point, Matt, that may not mean it came from the airplanes. It could have come from something else. But this is the work we have to do. And then at some point, I think, again, where do we come down on these issues? You know, where do we err? Do we err on the side of let's get it done sooner and faster because there's good evidence it's poisoning the kids? Or do we err on the side of saying, well, you know, nobody's really tested Oxnard and Santa Clara is different, and continue to roll it out? We have the same goal in mind. So maybe we just focus on that. I just want to emphasize that the importance that I see in it, and I think many people see in it.
I have a comment on this, and on a different level, and that is the Department of Education has to take a lot of responsibility here. I've been on this commission for quite a while, not quite as long as Adriana. And time again, prior to building a new school within flight patterns, we've objected to the location of the school, and the school boards go ahead and put that school right in harm's way. So, you know what? The schools are as responsible as aviation is. So it's a shared responsibility here. And we need to wake up to this instead of like a one-way picture here. And I take offense to this thing. And I haven't heard anyone speak up to that in this discussion.
Well, Steve, you know, I have to agree with both Steves, but I've, you know, also been on the commission a long time. And every time the question came up about where to put the school, these questions came up and were not, did not have much attention paid to them, I think would be a polite way of saying it. You know, so there is responsibility on all areas, you know, and as far as lead, yes, you know, lead can certainly come from, you know, the airplanes. It can also, you know, there's still lead in automobiles. There is still lead in paint. There's lead in a lot of things.
Kyle?
So, you know, so we do need to think about that as an entire study. You know, I know as well as looking at studies to see what unleaded fuel does to existing airplane structures. You know, I'm looking at my own airplane, which is a high performance, and you know, what kind of data do I have that I can safely put unleaded fuel in my airplane? And I think that kind of data also needs to be made available to pilots and Matt, please jump in on this. For people to be willing to go to unleaded fuel, they want to know with what's that unleaded fuel going to do to their plane.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. As a pilot myself with a high performance aircraft, you know, the options are out there, but it's getting that confidence in using it, especially when you have a less expensive alternative. So I think there's going to be an evolution that needs to occur here. And to Steve's comment about, you know, it is disappointing to hear that the authority and the commission had the opportunities to give input on some of these, but I'm going to broaden it further and just say developers, because I think developers in general sometimes chase these plots of land, which can be affordable, or they're affordable for a reason around an airport. And then they become, you know, the authority or the commissions or the county's problems that spends hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes to do studies and all kinds of stuff that could have been prevented by some good county planning in developers and some of the greed that persists there in putting hundreds of homes onto small plots. So
as well as making sure that developers do not promise right traffic if it is not possible. Developers should not be promising right or left traffic as appropriate without, without doing the proper homework and getting the proper people to approve of it.
So this is, go
Let me
ahead.
make myself clear on the Department of Airports, as long as I've been involved, has made it known time and time again, both to developers and school boards, that they're placing development and schools in harm's way. And I can't think of one instance where we haven't been ignored. So
You're
this-
correct, Steve. You're absolutely correct.
Adriana, this is well above my pay grade, but if you look at the GAMI marketing material, they speak to the pilots and they argue that unleaded fuel is better for the planes because it doesn't foul the spark plugs. So I've already gotten well above, in front of my skis on that, but that information is out there. It's coming from GAMI. They have a product they're trying to sell. So it's up to you guys to assess that, but that is their pitch, is that indeed.
Well, that is
better for the-
their pitch, but I think a lot of pilots are not necessarily going to agree with that. If you were to meet my husband, you'd probably have to have a long dissertation with him. But
you guys will have firsthand knowledge, because I'm going to, California Aeronautical University is going to be the first large consuming fleet. So you'll hear from, my actual data and mechanics as far as what it does. And I've talked to scientists, and I think I've got Director Friedis on the phone, and we had some discussion as well, because there's a lot here.
Good to know. I'll be interested. Well, let's see. Any other comments about aviation leaded fuel?
You do have a member of the public wishing to speak.
Thank you. Let's go ahead with that.
Okay, perfect. And I will read the last statement for public comment. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6F, please press the raise hand button now. Or if you're calling in today, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. I'll read one written public comment that was received, and then Mr. D. Benedetto, we will promote you at that time. The written comment that was received, it reads, "Good evening, my name is Joe Gosland. The EPA estimates that emissions from piston engine aircraft using leaded fuel account for about 70% of lead released into the atmosphere. This is leading to children all over the country being poisoned and harmed by this type of pollution. We all know there is new unleaded fuel available for use, and some airports are trying to adopt it. But as we have heard from one of the flight schools, it will take a long time for this to be accepted, as it is expensive and not readily available. It could be years before this new unleaded fuel is commonly used, especially at airports that use Oxnard for their touch and goes. Last month, the Long Beach City Council voted to explore ways to help speed the transition to cleaner forms of aviation fuel at their busy airport. Council members unanimously directed staff to work with city-owned Long Beach Airport and other stakeholders on a plan to reduce lead pollution from planes, citing particular concern for kids who live or go to school near the runways. There is no reason for Oxnard Airport to allow these lead-fueled planes to use our airport for touch and goes and further pollute our community. I would ask that the authority recommend an immediate ban of any piston engine plane using leaded fuel from touch and go training at Oxnard Airport." End of comment from Joe Gosselin. That concludes the written public comments that were received. Mr. D. Benedetto, we're promoting you now. If you'd like to unmute, show your screen if you'd like, and you will have 3 minutes.
Go ahead, please, Mr. Di Benedetto.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve Weiss. You brought up something that we have been fighting for months before we even talked to the airport about it. In July, early July, like right before the 4th of July, we sent the Santa Clara study and other materials to the County Board of Supervisors, the City Council, the mayor, the Oxnard School Board, referencing these studies and talk to them about, please look into this. Please get back to us and let us know if there's a way to go that we can look at this lead issue. We heard nothing, nothing. Followed up at city council meetings, brought it up that we had sent them the letter, heard nothing. Brought it up at the Board of Supervisors meeting, heard nothing. Dealt with the city's development department regarding Teal Club and the development that they want to put there in light of this study, and pointed out to them that their last study in 1998 said they could not remediate even the noise level, let alone a lead level, at the old Teal Club residents, and that they either have to buy those residents or not operate. They could not mitigate it. It's in their own 131 study accepted by the FAA. And yet the city has this EIR, which they refused to close after public comment. They left it open because they don't know what to do now, about a development of another 900 homes, a school, and the Department of Education, Oxnard Department of Education School Administration Building at Teal Club. So we have that fight coming up. So on September 30th, I sent a letter to the airport director requesting that he forward those studies, and request to the Airport Advisory Board and to the Airport Authority Board that they put an agenda item on their agenda to address this issue. They did not do that. I followed up a week later and found that I got, written communication from Ms. Castro that the director had passed along the links to the chairs of the advisory board and the authority board, not the letter, the links. So we've been fighting this for 4 months before we even talked to the airport about it. It's part of the problem, but we need communication and cooperation, and we need to come together. You and the the community leaders need to get the city and the development department and the developers in front of us. The North Shore Development's EIR states the airport will not overfly them. It's in the ERA and it's entitled, and they're starting to build. That's all I have. But thank you for bringing that up.
Are there any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Di Benedetto. Are there any other comments from the public?
Yes, we do see a hand raised from Walter Hagedom. We will promote you now, Mr. Hagedom. Give us a moment. Okay, you can unmute and show your screen if you'd like, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to jump in on this because things came up about the airport not wanting developments around it and schools and things such as that. This came up, we realized this a couple of years ago, and we started looking into this because of North Shores. The director of airports at that time wrote a scathing letter to the city of Oxnard and said, you shouldn't be doing this. And it gave all the reasons that you're giving now. However, the city went right ahead with it, and that development, in fact, I was at an INCO meeting the other night where Catherine Mallory, who's at the planning department, was asked about North Shores, and she said it's going to start building. We were told last year by the airport that it wasn't going to happen. We've been bringing this up, that even the flight paths right now, that the new noise abatement maps show them going right over North Shore. So that's going to be an issue that you're going to have to deal with. All these things, there's this disconnect between the city, the county, and the airport. And there's all these discussions about, well, we've got these leaded fuels, we've got all this problems with this, but who's left holding the bag? It's the public, it's us. And we're the ones that are out there screaming about this, but it seems this was the first time I've ever heard someone on this commission saying, hey, there's a real problem here. There's a problem of communication, not just between the public. We don't need a PIO. It's a problem between the city and the county and the airport. And it's not just developers. There's money involved. The city wants these development. They need housing. This could be a good start for someone to just say, let's get a discussion going with the city of Oxnard on how this is going to be resolved. because we don't want to continue to scream and yell about this all the time. But it's the public holds the bag. These developments come up, the city wants them, the airport decides it doesn't want them, but it doesn't do anything in the end. The county doesn't do anything in the end to work with the city to make sure that the airport is viable. And in this case, there's been so much development with schools and everything else that, and with not going forward with plans for the airport after commercial aircraft operations were changed to make a viable airport here. So we have a real problem, and that has to be addressed. Some of those things came up tonight, and I think that it might be good to start talking to the city and about some of these developments and how this can be resolved. As far as the public's concerned, we really don't like doing this, but we really have to because no one else is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to add something further to what Walter just said. And that is, when it comes to the Board of Education, they don't come under the city or county or anything. They act on their own. So that's a whole other problem. I think that, you know, as long as I've been, I going all the way back to early 2000, when I first came on this board, I can't tell you all the times that the Department of Airports filed grievances, et cetera, like why development shouldn't take place. And I really can't think of any time that we quashed anything. So that's the history that, and it wasn't without effort.
I have to support Mr. Weiss. I have a few years on him, a couple. And every time that this came up from the Board of Education, we came up with very good reasons why this would not work, why there was a danger, and whatever other reasons. And every time we were, how would you put this, Steve? We were not listened to?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's what leads us to even some of the topics we're dealing with today with noise and these other things, because development continues, and then 20 years down the road, right, before there were canals and, you know, boats that could go in for miles, you know, there were fields, but it's developed, and now we hear complaints from residences that live in these areas and the school that's built there to accommodate more people. So I think it's a balance, right? It's a balance of everyone recognizing what they're getting into, and you know, the airport community, everything has to evolve, right? So the airport community has to evolve, the communities we live in have to evolve, but you know, all the things you guys are speaking to have absolutely, what I'm hearing you say is no kind of an ignoring of the topics from developers or those can influence, you know, messaging and that type of thing in these developments. It's discouraging to hear.
I remember one discussion about putting a school somewhere that we were all very concerned was going to be very noisy. And we were told, oh no, it would not be a problem. There were going to be, like, I think, triple paned windows or something. Steve, does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's the school right on 5th, right across from Oxnard Airport.
Yeah, that's the one. And, you know, they were going to especially build it so that it would be, it had no problem whatsoever. And guess what? So anyway, but I think we need to move on if there are no further comments.
No further comments, Chair.
Thank you. Can we move on to the director's report, please?
Yes, I have
We're
a
going
few
to
items.
receive and file the report of the update. So let's move on to the director's report, Mr. Director.
Madam Chair, yes, a few items from the last meeting where committee member Tannehill asked about our EV or electric vehicle charging stations. One, I think he had two questions. One was, were they going to be charge for use? The answer is yes. And then he asked, were they level 2 or 3? They are level 2 charge stations. So I want to get that out there.
Thank you, Victor.
Then we have private hangar ground lease. We have started the inspections and the document transition. So basically we're shooting for 25 to 30 members from Cohota between the two airports to go through, and hoping, planning to wrap that up by June of 2023. The security cameras at both airports are still moving along. Installation is expected to be completed by the fourth quarter of this year. The self-serve fuel island continues to be an issue at Camarillo. Still waiting for the manufacturer. Supply chain issue still is a challenge for AVEX to get those repairs completed. They're looking at mid-December at this point. We do have a nice Streets of Vintage event happening at Oxnard Airport in the parking lot, shooting for Saturday, November 26th. Small businesses, kind of celebration, entrepreneur of the year. And so there'll be food trucks and maybe even some music happening on that day. Sorry to report that the new tower manager that was slated to come to Oxnard Airport did not work out. So I'm happy to report that Lee Westfall is still with us as the interim. He's done a fabulous job working with us on our noise issues. So glad that he's still with us there. And then I have a picture. I mentioned in July we had Colson helicopter. They had one helicopter. They brought in a couple helicopters last month to do some fire training. I'm happy to report they had to do some fire training because they weren't being exercised on missions out firing fires. We had a pretty good summertime, so they weren't exercised. So they had to do some training. So we had a couple helicopters at Camarillo. And even got a nice public comment from a neighbor, absolutely delighted about the practice sessions out of Camarillo. We did do a PR notice that we had some increased helicopters happening, with the understanding with the flight crews that they would not be doing, flight training from midnight to 5 a.m. We did not get any direct complaints. They were aware of our noise sensitive communities and stayed out of those areas for us. And then did want to show a couple signs. One of our community members had asked. We have these signs at Camarillo Airport, but they were not at Oxnard Airport. So we added some avoid residential overflights. A couple signs were installed by our maintenance crews the last couple weeks out at Oxnard Airport. And next item, I do want to mention again that we are looking to not have a December meeting. It's pretty slow, and we do not have items at this point. So we do not expect to have a December AAC meeting at this point.
You had one other item, sir.
We did get receive a notice from Mr. Williams, which I think he had mentioned a couple meetings ago, that he was going to officially retire from the AAC. Mr. Williams, I don't know if you would like to make any comments about that.
Oh, well, thank you, Keith. I wasn't expecting that, but yes, I was appointed originally by Judy Michaels in 2003. So I didn't quite make 20 years, but I feel like I'm not flying as much as I should, and maybe I need to spend more time on that and have some fun with flying. But it's been very interesting. I wanted to understand how the airports existed in Ventura County, and I've learned a lot over the years how that works. And I see some of the things we've done, as were mentioned by Steve and Adriana, that, we weren't always successful. But we did get our voice out there, and, it is what it is now. So good luck to all you guys for putting this together. I may not be in California that much longer, so just don't know what the future is going to bring. But I wish you all the best and hope to see airports out here if I ever make it back to, I'm still a resident, a tenant at Camarillo, but, that may not last too long. So anyway, happy flying to all of you in blue skies. And I'm just glad I got to know all of you. So thank you very much.
Miss you, Bobby.
This is Steve. I just wanted to say to Bobby, thank you. We all spent time, myself, Pat Thomas, Adriana, speaking before the Board of Supervisors a number of times. Sometimes we were successful, most of the times not on certain issues, but we were right there, and thanks for doing a great job on the commission.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll miss you, Bobby.
Thank you. Yeah. I did put my retirement at December 31st in case you wanted to have something in December. So, but I figured that, my supervisor, I'm in the 4th district, and he didn't run for re-election. So there will be a new supervisor. We don't know who it is yet, but I just want to give them freedom to appoint somebody, who's willing and able, and could use the experience.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Anything else?
Bobby.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Director?
That is it. Thank you.
Okay. We have items that look like for information only. And then we have commission comments by commission members on matters deemed appropriate. Any comments from the commission?
I'd like to make one comment and just mention that in January, we're going to have our organization meeting. And as Bobby mentioned, Supervisor Huber will not be returning, and Linda Parks will not be returning. We potentially have a lot of new members. Anyway, I would just like the board to consider, I would be interested in leading the commission next year, and I'd ask the board to consider that. I'm familiar with Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm familiar with the Brown Act, and I had 12 years experience running a similar board in a previous lifetime. So I just want to mention that. I don't know what the process is, but I did want to get that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? With no other comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
I think Bobby just seconded it. He's muted though.
Second.
Oh, he's muted. Okay. Is there?
True,
everyone-
sorry. I was
Oh,
going
that's
to do
okay.
my last official act as I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see you
Okay.
in January.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.